Well, thank you. I threw a couple logos up on the screen. SBS and Boen and Associates. We're going to be doing some fun tabletopping today. So thanks for coming. Nick, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. My name is Nick Podhradsky. I'm with SBS Cybersecurity. We're out of Madison, South Dakota. Looking forward to having some fun with you guys this morning.
And I'm Travis Kroger. I'm Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Boen and Associates is a independent insurance agency, and I'm the cyber lead. So I get to do with the cyber insurance, any technical questions you might have that the insurance company is mandating. I'm that guy that kind of runs interference.
Yeah, so we've got some really cool two different views for everybody this morning: the cybersecurity risk management side, and then insurance. So it'd be really fun.
Before we get started, just poll, who here has an incident response plan? Is it specific to cybersecurity for the most part? Perfect. So we've got some veterans in the room. How many of you have tested it? Okay, so good. We got a good chunk. Those of you online, if you are interacting, we do have someone here monitoring it. So if you have a question, throw it out at any time and we'll make sure we get it addressed. This is very casual. If there's something that doesn't quite make sense or you need clarification on, stop us. We'll answer it.
And during the tabletops today, what we'll try to do is walk through each of the steps of an incident response process that you see on the screen. So, preparation is more on the front end, right? So do I have an incident response plan? Do I test it? Do I maintain it? Am I prepared for response? And then once we get into the tabletops, we'll talk about the step of detection and analysis. And then we'll get into how do we contain the incident and how do we get back and recover? When do we recover? And then we'll get into the post-incident activities and those types of things. So as we walk through the tabletop, we'll try to address each of these stages of the incident response process. We'll stop, we'll talk, we'll interact. That way we get everything out.
Yeah, when he says we, it's us. We're the company now. Everybody in this room and online, we are the people that are making these decisions, right, wrong, otherwise, which leads us to our next
slide.
So
Let's do a little prep work here. I think we've got varying levels of experience with incident response tabletop testing. So why don't we walk through really quickly, in order to give us a hands-on experience, let's walk through like the 5 whys here really quick. So when it comes to incident response testing, the first why is, why do we do it? The first W is why do we do testing? What's the purpose of doing a tabletop test? I'm sorry? Practice. Okay, practicing for a real world scenario, right? Okay. Any others? Why do we do it? Check for flaws. Say that again. Check for flaws. Checking for flaws. What are we missing in our plan today, right? All right. So that's why we do it. And it should be something annually. Who does it annually? You may do it annually. You guys got to do it annually. Okay. Maybe there's more often. Think about this for a second. If I only do this annually, how many cyber incidents or cyber threats are we worried about? Ransomware, DDoS, phishing. How many scenarios are we doing? Because if we only do one scenario one time a year, we're missing like 4 or 5 different scenarios. So think about maybe we should do this more often or not. Okay, second W is who? Who's part of the tabletop?
Everybody.
Okay, when you say everybody.
Leadership all the way down.
Okay.
So you got marketing, you got communication, you got cyber, you got legal.
Okay, basically department heads from each of those departments or just everybody?
Everyone.
Okay.
We work finance, the tellers that we have respond, call center, it's going to be answering the phone call. What's their script?
Okay. Anybody else have an answer to that? That's a good answer.
We do everybody too, but we're small.
Anybody else have anything different? Are the presidents involved?
Yes.
Okay.
what about owners?
Yes.
Yeah, directors? Okay. All right. The next W is the what. So what do you test typically? So we heard some cybersecurity. Is there anything unique that you've done from a cybersecurity testing tabletop standpoint? That is it ransomware? What is it the same one every time? Is there anything different?
Whatever Dylan tells us.
Well, okay,
No.
fair
We
enough.
just-
Okay, so not just a cyber incident, but more of a disaster recovery type
Yeah.
of scenario. Okay. Anything else?
For those of you over here that raised your hand that you tested, what was your last scenario about? What was the incident? Do I remember? Okay,
We did, well, one of them was our president who was hit by the bus and how we would work without him. We also did a phishing email compromise. We tested that and then we did a train derailment campaign. All three. And then
Boy, it's really sad world, people getting hit by a bus and a train's going off.
It's a
the
very
rails.
interesting day. We made it.
You could put a positive spin saying that the president won the lottery.
And he got phased out, yeah.
Okay. All right, so where? W, where do you host these? Is it online? Is everybody supposed to come in? How long does it have? How long is the tabletop test? Because if you're pulling everybody in, just think about how much time and effort it takes to get people together for this, right? If you're pulling everybody, it's a dedicated time. So I've seen some organizations take Columbus Day off, or with Columbus Day, and pull everybody in and do their tabletop. So what do you guys do? Is it just a standard once a year, it's on the schedule right now? Or how does that work? When do you do it? And where do you do it?
has anybody started doing it virtually? Now that after COVID, we can do things online. Is it always in person?
I think these are really important things to think about when you're starting to structure your tabletop testing program. Is who's going to be involved? When is it going to be? What are we going to do? Where is it going to be? And how do we get it scheduled, right? So those are all the things to take into consideration. If you're going to pull everybody in to do a tabletop, it's got to be a very structured thing, because you got the president's time, the finance, the front line people. How do we get enough time and effort so that we're pulling everybody in? Okay, so I just wanted to cover that first. We talked about that's how the procedures work, and we'll lay down some ground rules, but I wanted to get that out first, is think about who, what, where, why, when around testing.
So on the insurance side, I don't know what sectors of industry you guys are from. It's starting to become mandatory to have an incident response plan in order to get a cyber insurance policy. If it's not mandatory, it's gonna be. It's coming right down the road, because insurance companies, I don't know if you figured it out, are really driven by money. They like money. They love money. They need money to pay claims. So the shorter amount of time it takes you to get back up and running, the less money they have to pay out. So therefore, having a plan when it hits the fan is very, very, very important in their eyes. So looking in that crystal ball, looking forward, it's going to become mandatory. If you don't have an incident response plan, maybe start working on one. If you don't test it, it's pretty easy to do. It's pretty fun to do. Up here, I did the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing, because that's kind of what I think about, right? You're making up a scenario. You have a leader, a dungeon master, you might say. In mind, I like to incorporate dice or cards or coin flips to say, okay, instead of the president being out, if this is an even number, then he's going to be out. If it's an odd number, the secretary is going to be out, right? It brings in some randomness. It gamifies it a little bit. It's at the end of the day, this is to get better. It's fun. And if you can have a successful one, you can identify those gaps in coverage. Hey, maybe we only have a $50,000 ransomware sublimit, and our email is extremely vulnerable. after walking through this. It's something to do. And if you communicate that with your cyber insurance agent, they might be able to write a letter to your company and get those premiums reduced. Companies just aren't reducing premiums. Who has cyber insurance here? I got stuff in my hands. How come you didn't raise your hand? Okay, so cyber insurance has been doing a lot of this right now. It's been going up, 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 up. Everybody hates me because last year there were companies that I had to explain a 200% or a 300% increase in premium. But with good tactics and the relationships that I've got with our underwriters now, I can write them a letter saying, hey, this is why this isn't a scary risk. And all of a sudden that up, up, up becomes a little more flat, sometimes a little bit down, but not recently. All right, so we got some ground rules here. Everybody know how to read? There are no right or wrong answers when it comes to this. If you have something that seems out in left field, you're not comfortable saying out loud, just know that you can. There's no wrong answers. And be open that any of your IT guys, how often do we see this? The IT guys in the room, gals in the room, they could be wrong. The stuff that you pay tens of thousands of dollars for can and will fail. This one, the scenario, the dungeon master, the person that is coming up with this, it's going to be creative. It's gonna make you think outside the box. It's not gonna be your everyday scenario. But here's another thing. A lot of my clients, they don't have their own IT team. A lot of them rely on a managed service provider. A lot of them have virtual CISOs. This is critical, understanding that your staff, your facilities are going to be integral in the story. And we're going to figure out a way to make sure we move forward.
These are great rules for you to set when you're pulling everybody in. Set the ground rules, because you get some executives into a room and they're going to do their tabletop test. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about, so they might not type up when the question is asked during a tabletop test, right? So having an open session where there's no wrong answers, right? Say what you want to say. You know, this can be a fun, interactive tabletop test, because if it's not fun and it's not useful, then they feel like they're wasting their time. So set these as ground rules, saying that nothing's out of bounds. If we don't have the system, or if we don't have these controls, that's fine. Use what we have to figure out what we should do. So these are the ground rules for the leaders of the tabletop test to say, hey, this is an open book. We're all gonna participate, and we're gonna start walking through this scenario. Okay.
And the key word there was leaders, right? We need to have leaders in this scenario, whether it's the IT person that got tasked with throwing this table or this incident response plan together, or the president of the company. They need to step up and lead this scenario. So our scenario, a week ago, the CFO at the Acme Manufacturing Company receives an email that appears to come from a trusted vendor that they've done business with forever. It lets all their clients know that in 2 weeks, they would be changing their bank account information. So please update your records. It's legitimate. Signatures match up with the ones that you've dealt with in the past. No typos. Everything looks right. Today, that same CFO received an email with the new wiring instructions per the prior request, and says, hey, just a heads up, this is gonna happen. So we update it and we pay it. And we lost 75 grand, it's gone.
So what's the likely culprit? What's the likely cause, or the likely attack, or the likely threat that just occurred?
business email compromise.
Okay,
Business email.
everybody understand what business email compromise is? Do you want to just give us a short?
Sure. Just basically means the email account was hacked, all the credentials are stolen, somebody has access to it, and they're sending out emails, asking to change bank account.
So basically that trusted vendor has been compromised. Is there any other scenario, the likely cause that this could happen at all?
So you think the vendor is the only one that could be hacked here?
Could be the CFO's email. The internal.
That's it.
Good. So we could be compromised. And the CFO actually didn't send the money out or the wire, and they did it. Okay, so there's a couple. So this happened. What do? What's the first thing we do? Let's call that vendor, chew them out, cancel our contract, and sue them for $75,000. Or do we report the incident to the incident response coordinator? Do we contact the bank and try to recover the funds? Or do we notify the FBI? Which one? Let's do a hands up. Contact the vendor and fire them.
Anybody for that?
Fire them?
Maybe contact.
Okay, just contact them. Okay, so what do we say when we contact them?
Are you aware of?
Okay, how do you contact them? Do you just respond in an email? Okay,
Contact information.
yeah, okay, we call them and talk to somebody.
I think you do number 2 first, and everybody gets assigned 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, so let's talk about number 2, report the incident response coordinator. Does everybody have an incident response coordinator defined? If we don't, that would be a really good thing. Are you the coordinator?
I mean, unfortunately.
You are. Are you the coordinator? Who else is the coordinator in here? I think she's like half raising her hand. Don't want to get involved. Got it. It's okay. All right. So the incident response coordinator, because they will set those things in motion. They might contact the bank to try to reverse it. They might contact the vendor. They'll start maybe the investigation side, right? Okay. So what about notifying the FBI or notifying people or public safety or the attorney general's office? Is there any notifications that happen at this point?
You want to call your cyber insurance provider first.
Let's go. Oh my gosh. All right, we got a right answer here. I said number one.
I didn't even mention him. Okay, cyber insurance, get them involved as early as you can. There's legalese. Do you have attorneys? Maybe you might have to go under attorney-client privilege,
But that's where the cyber insurance provider will work.
right?
Yes.
You don't want to be
Good.
working directly with the attorney.
Yeah.
This is a much better crowd than I was expecting.
We're making fun of you. All right. Go ahead.
Well, when cyber insurance handle the forensics portion of it, answer.
There you go. All right,
They have
so
their own panels, right?
So we're on the right track here. I love the suggestion, obviously, of getting insurance involved early and often, because you pay money for cyber insurance policy that will basically, if you don't have an incident response coordinator, if you don't have anything in place, they come in and quarterback for you. They're the ones that will be contacting those authorities to get your money back, right? They're the ones that have the Department of Homeland Security on speed dial, right? They're the ones that will pay for your lawyer. They're the ones that will put that client attorney privilege in place and pay for that lawyer to talk to that incident response firm.
Are we missing anything on this initial step? Let's see here.
We would contact our cyber partner as well. just to-
Okay. If you have managed security or cybersecurity, they partner with SBS as a consultative approach. If you've got experts that you know, maybe we work with them or don't, why not contact and say, what do you think we should do? Is there anything additional that we should think about at this point? We don't have any more information at this point. right? They're off kind of starting the response process, but is there anything else we should think about doing? Should we sign out, change passwords at this point? Do we do that? Like, when do we pull that trigger? The answer to all of this is these are all good things, good steps to take, right? All of them have steps in the process that could be part of your playbook. Go ahead.
Shouldn't steps have been taken before you even like transferred the money? Should you have done the phone call to the company and got the correct routing number and et cetera?
You mean like a dual control?
Possibly.
Huh,
Interesting.
weird. That's a great idea. Yeah, the CFO,
It doesn't, but that's,
it's just the CFO's buddy, he's not the money.
it's my butt on the line if I don't make that call.
Exactly, and a lot of insurance policies, especially in the financial world, won't pay for something like this if you didn't make that call. That's right in the policy, it's a legal contract. So that's great.
Okay.
Keep that in your pocket till later.
No, that's perfect. No. You know, the password reset, you know, maybe if you do that right away, maybe you hold off, it's the dual controls, right? So,
So I want to jump in here. You guys know a little bit about cyber insurance. What coverages do you think would kick in here
yeah,
that you've seen on that piece of paper that you might send to a vendor? What coverages? Anybody seen funds transfer fraud? What about social engineering? How about invoice manipulation? My favorite is wire transfer fraud because the acronym's WTF, and that's what I always say when my client tells me something like this. Yeah, that's what it was. It was WTF, guys. There's a lot of different areas of coverage that if you get that insurance company involved early and often, they'll help you pay for it. And this is something that's often overlooked in the tabletops that I've been a part of. They don't consider who's paying for this.
really quick before.
Yeah.
Just wanna, at any time during tabletops, when you're leading a tabletop, changing the situation is a good thing. So we said, you're the coordinator. Guess what? You're on vacation. Now what do you do? Who's the coordinator? Yeah.
It's this girl.
Right, so who's the backup coordinator? Who's number two, right? So those are, anytime during a tabletop, you could change the situation. And as you get farther, you get new information. So let's go to the next slide, right? So the next slide, we get a little more information here. We found out the funds are not recoverable. We're too late. And we gotta, you know, so what do? Go back to business? Well, too bad. We're done. Do we determine if the fraud is an internal issue? Do we try to determine what was accessed? Do we force change passwords across the organization? I heard that one. Do we hire a forensics company? So what would you do?
We've already taken.
Funds are unrecoverable. What do we do?
We've already taken some good steps.
You can see if the insurance company will pay for a forensics company to do the investigation.
Yes, and depending on your insurance company, you have to use a specific one. How many of you have vetted your forensics companies that your insurance company lets you use? How many of them know whether they even work with your industry and understand what you're going through?
I was gonna say, it's important when you're shopping insurance, to make sure that you tell them if you have preferred lenders, so that way they can get in quicker than going through the insurance company, because it could take time. But if you want like SBS to be your forensics company or your managed service provider, that you want to get in there and start locking things down, you want to make sure your insurance company is okay with it, otherwise they could.
You have to be pre-approved.
Pre-approved before the claims.
That takes time.
It takes
Right.
time, it takes relationships. There are carriers out there. You don't have to raise your hands, but if you have Beasley, they won't let you do that anymore. If you have a retainer with incident response company and you have an incident, Beasley will not pay for that incident response firm. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but they threw me under the bus. So it hurts.
Sounds.
Scenarios change.
Scenarios change.
But the thing to keep track of is, okay, who are my vendors? what law firm, what time zone is that law firm gonna be in? If I have something happen after hours, are they gonna be in New York? Are they gonna be in LA? There's rarely any in the Midwest that are on these panels. Okay, who is the consult for DDoS? We just heard about DDoS from Katie. Each one has their own specific company that deals with DDoS. Have you vetted them? Are they aware of who your ISP is? Will they work together? These are all things that need to happen before an incident. So that was a tangent. Thank you.
What else here? Anything else that we don't know or what we should do at this step with the information that we have? We know that it's unrecoverable. What don't we know?
Are they still in your system?
Do we know if they're in our system?
Still active in?
Yeah, are they in ours or in the vendors, right? Anything else that we should throw on this step? If there was a security incident, no matter what, if you know or don't know, changing passwords across the business does not hurt anything. Right? It might be a pain in the butt for some people, but changing the passwords across the business is always a good option that at least try to contain the situation, right? That's what we're trying to do, is understand the situation so it's no longer a threat to the business, and then we can start following up and eradicate it and recover it. So let's go to the next. All right. So it turns out the vendor was the victim of a spear phishing attack and they are compromised. So what do? High five, go back to business. Not our problem. Create a post-incident report, pull the lessons learned, immediately put everyone through phishing and training, ensure that there are dual controls in place, perform a security configuration audit, roll out multi-factor. What are we missing on here at this point? We know it's the vendor that's compromised. It must not be us. But what if it was? Let's switch that up. Let's say both of us, the vendor and our company, are compromised. Then what do we do?
I still think you high five everyone.
High five everybody.
We're still off 75 grand, but insurance has got it. I like that.
Any changes that you guys would make if we were compromised? Because we know we're going to hire this forensics firm, we're going to change passwords. What about
the vendors insurance with reimbursement for the loss?
At that point, though, I don't think you'd contact the insurance firm directly. I think your legal team or your cyber insurance would seek that.
So I could do like a 10-hour talk. That's called subrogation. What would happen there? 90% of insurance is insurance companies suing each other, all on the back end. But that's called subrogation. That's correct. Like that, they might have limits. Your insurance should pay first, and then they'll go and recover it. That's how that works. Finding faults. That's subrogation, long word, but it just means insurance companies suing each other over who was at fault.
Well, let's talk about the. Go ahead.
You have me confused here. You're saying both the vendors.
I changed it up. I did an inject now. So in this scenario, it turns out the vendor was compromised. I was changing it and say, hey, we're both compromised. Does that change our approach?
Okay. Did you get the answer?
No, I never did.
I don't know where you're going with it.
Okay. It's fair. It's open, honest. There's nothing. So here's where I'm going with it. Is if we know that it's the other vendor that's compromised, not us, then we don't have to worry about any kind of notifications or communication to our customers. If we are compromised from an email perspective, we have to try to understand what kind of information that they access. Because if we store customer data in email, that now falls under the notification rules of South Dakota, which are 60 days. And if it's a 250 or more, then it goes to the Attorney General's office, right? So if we are compromised, we have to understand what are our notification and a communication steps that we're going to take. Are we going to send out notice to our customers saying we had an incident, we don't know everything, but we know that your information may be compromised? So what's PR look like from there? Because that's a step. If you're compromised, you have to deal with it. Because customers are going to be mad that you had a breach. So what's your PR style? Do you have anything to add from the PR? What you guys?
Well, our cyber insurance and our partners, people they partnered with, they took care of that when we had an incident. They wrote up a letter and they put together a call center for customer.
Okay. So sounds like insurance is a one-stop shop for some of that stuff now. Huh? Okay.
Yeah, it's cool, scary, bad, whatever.
Yeah.
As the bad actors get better and better and better, insurance companies have to go up against them every day. So they've gotten really good at it. In your insurance policies, there may be verbiage for reputation management, reputation repair. They hire forensic accountants to go in before and after the incident and compare trends, sales, everything, and figure out what that costs on your reputation. They do the notification with you. How many states do you guys do business in? More than one, probably, except for you. Right, so you know all 50 laws in your head. No, insurance companies, they do. They hire teams of lawyers that specialize in the notification, even the GDPR, the other requirements that people might have depending on what state they live in and how they handle data.
Couple of things I want to just come back to and address. All right, so we know it was the vendor that was compromised. Do you keep doing business with them?
Might have to. What's the situation with that vendor?
What's that? Right. How dependent are you on that vendors? Maybe do you hold them to different security requirements now because they were compromised, right? So that's a consideration in your discussion is how do we handle our vendor relationship when they become compromised? You could, within a contract, say, well, going forward, we need to make sure that you're enforcing MFA or, all of these types of things. That's a consideration that you can say, we want to continue doing business, but that you represent a risk.
So who monitors if you demand that you have MFA? Who's monitoring that? I don't have the time to monitor my vendor doing.
Yep. So there is a kind of on the front end of a contracting process that you can ask all of the questions, just like an insurance process. And they can lie,
Right.
but you can also make it part of the contract. You can say, it's understood under this contract. You might get somebody, your attorneys involved to say that these are all the minimum requirements that we have for you as a vendor for us. You have to meet them. And if they have a breach and they don't have that, then they're in breach of the contract, right?
And there are, with the advent of AI, I don't know if any of you guys realize he only has 4 fingers. That's an AI image. Every image in here has been AI created. There are contract management softwares out there that run through and keep up to date with those contracts, request the appropriate insurance requirements. And that's what a lot of my people have done when you're trying to vet your vendors, right? Does anybody here have a process to vet a third-party vendor?
Yes,
So you know how much it sucks.
it's about 2-3 hours a month just to keep up on contracts. But when you onboard them, of course, we're looking at the DR plan, we're looking at their finance. However, most vendors you do business with will have a due diligence package already prepared. You just have to ask for it. And then we put contract expiration dates in there. And back to your question of how do you monitor if they do implement 2MFA, the reality is you can't, but if we made that request and they fail, it happens again, you would need obviously other ways, but
You could also in the contract put a right to audit at any time to ensure some of that stuff. Now, you can't treat every single vendor like that. You've got to classify them as very critical, levels of vendors, right? Otherwise you'd be There is a very good market for anybody that wants to go into vendor management as a career. Anybody that wants to just monitor contracts and vendors, there's a big market out there for anybody who wants to do that. Not everybody loves that stuff, so. Let's keep moving here. All right, incident report, create a post-incident report. What is that? And what do you do with it? What's a post-incident report?
Summarizing the incident, lessons learned, steps you're gonna, or new dual controls you might implement, things you're gonna do. What we do with it is it goes to our IT committee, it goes to the board of directors.
Okay. So I heard that post-incident goes to IT directors and the board of directors. Is there anybody else that sees that?
Our regulator.
Regulators, insurance, possibly.
I tell you what, to answer your question, should everybody get that? That goes back to Katie's talk about what type of information you want to share with everyone. Right? If you haven't implemented these security factors yet, it's not tell everybody what the weaknesses are. Let's keep it internal, let's keep it close. And then once those decisions are made, then we can start sharing. Okay. But going back to the insurance company, not every insurance agent will do this, but I can take those post-incident responses and go to my underwriters and say, hey, we just did a tabletop exercise. I did this with one of my clients. Here's the things that they crushed. Here's the changes we're making to their procedures. Next renewal, is there any chance we can go flat or a discount? Because these are the protocols that they're doing. It took me 5 minutes to type an email, thanks to ChatGPT. But it's possible to leverage the stuff that you do every day that isn't asked about on an insurance application to benefit your organization. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head as you do these things that aren't being asked. Write them down.
Let's jump to dual controls because she brought it up earlier, right?
Yeah.
So dual controls. All right, what's dual controls? Where do they exist?
Give us an example.
Give us an example of dual controls. Anybody?
We've got some finance people in here. Let's.
For us, for our wire system, like in this instance, to send out a wire, it takes 2 separate people to verify the wire and let it go.
Because in this scenario, the CFO sent it out without somebody extra, right?
Yeah.
Can anybody send out one thing by themselves? Okay, so it's got to be verified by 2 people before it goes. Okay,
But we also don't wire in this operating account, we have a separate account that has a lot less money, so that if it is compromised, we're losing 7,000, not 7 million.
there you go. So separating the accounts.
And
Good.
then we'll transfer that into our operating.
Okay. So we got a couple financial institutions here. But if I'm a small business and I put dual controls in place, then I have to have 2 people. But at the financial institution, the other thing at the financial institution is they're going to require a certain amount of standards typically for them to process a wire as well. Right? So go to your financial institution, hey, what kind of dual controls do you offer? What kind of services or security services do you offer around these types of transactions? Because they will have a certain level that they are going to require in order for it to be sent out.
Take that email, that response that your financial institution gives, give it to your cyber insurance agent and say, hey, for the dual control question, I wasn't sure how to answer it because I didn't know what dual control was. Turns out my bank's really good at it. They won't let me send any money unless I do these things. That will help clarify some of those questions. All too often, we get applications back where nobody really understood what they were talking about. So that's one of those things where if you have evidence, when that insurance agent asks for that discount, they're not going to give it to you just because you presented it. You have to ask for it. That gives them ammunition to go to their underwriter and say, hey, this is a good account. They're doing things right. Here's my proof.
About what does it mean performing a security configuration What does that mean to you? Is that even an option or something that we should do at this point? So we know the vendor is the one that got compromised. But does it go to you and be like, I wonder how big of a risk is this for us? Right? So financial institutions in the room typically do security audits every year and a half or whatever, so they get some of that type of stuff. But if you ever look through, a lot of organizations rely on Microsoft 365. I've got email through it. I use SharePoint. I have Teams, right? I've got all of this business central stuff that could have customer data. And if I've got access to email, then I probably have access to all the SharePoint stuff too. So have you ever done a configurations audit against that to make sure that I'm doing limited access? I've got good conditional access controls. I'm matched against CIS standards and those types of things, right? So that could be a reactionary or a proactive approach to understanding if I've got weaknesses in my security settings today, where are those?
Does anybody do audits frequently on just configs? Because that's one thing that I'm not an IT guy. I talk the talk, I walk the walk, but I'm just an insurance guy that knows cybersecurity a little bit. When I found out that logs are by default turned off on Office 365, that was an eye opener. Like, what other security settings are turned off by default just to make it easier on the end user? That's something that I relied on SBS to educate me that if you're not signed up for their hacker hours, plug, Nick does a great job.
All right, anything else before we keep moving here? How much time we got?
We're doing right.
Okay. Anything else?
Anything else? Do we miss anything? Everybody has MFA on, right? Did you tell your insurance agent thanks? That was mandatory?
Yeah.
Well, the thing around MFA, what we've seen in a couple of situations is that they had access to MFA, but it was not enforced out there. It was optionary, but it was not enforced. So there were people in the organization that hadn't set it up, right? So make sure that it's definitely enforced. All right, so we've gone through the cycle of the incident response process. We identified, we detected, and we detected this because $75,000 went missing, right? If we had dual controls into place, we could have detected an attack and stopped it. We went through the containment process on a high level, got insurance involved. We understand that we are not compromised as far as we know, based on maybe my MSP went through and did a quick check to make sure that, or maybe we had a forensics company to come in and check. Now we know that we're contained. And then we have recovered, we're back to business, but we're, maybe some changes that we want to make because of this learning situation. Right. So now we come to the last part of the process, which is the lessons learned. We can learn lessons for everyday cybersecurity events. So Katie talked about, everybody knows the MGM one, a 10-minute phone call. $100 million 10-minute phone call, right? So the lesson there is social engineering works. And do we know if our people get a call from our IT department, are they going to fall for it? Are they trained, right? So let's kind of go down this lessons learned. Since you're the insurance guy, I'll let you take it first on.
Well, they did a good job. We got insurance involved early. And it sounded like almost everybody for almost every step said, well, doesn't insurance cover that? Doesn't insurance do that? We did a config audit on our Office 365. Has anybody ever audited their insurance policy to make sure it does what you think it's gonna? Because some of those things that we talked about insurance taking over and doing, a lot of policies don't. So it's important to make sure that you understand that. So, but we did learn, let's get insurance involved.
Even like the social engineering,
Yeah, that
like
could be,
for MGM. Do I have a policy that would cover me if somebody was social engineered within my organization?
yeah, I mean, the default sublimit on that's less than 250,000. So MGM would be in trouble.
Well, they are anyway.
Yeah,
Right, okay, so document an incident response plan and test annually. Okay, so I think for the most part, everybody raised their hand that they have an incident response plan. I think that if we don't have one, we get a simple one in place, because you could go overboard on incident response plan. How long is your guys' incident response plan? 60 pages. You mind if I ask how long your incident response plan is?
Less than 3.
3 pages,
mine's 4 pages.
all right?
Finding.
You probably have disaster
Yeah.
recovery.
I can
Yes. Right, but even some of that could be overwhelming from that perspective, right? So always try to keep it as simple as possible with enough information to make a decision on it, right? So the way that SBS works to set things up is it's a layered approach from a governance standpoint. First of all, you just have a policy. The policy says that you do it, right? So I have an incident response policy. It's approved by the board. We test it annually. It's owned by this. It's our policy that we have an incident response plan. Boom, done. Then we come in with the second layer and said, well, this is the actual plan. If this happens, then we do this. You know, these are the escalation procedures that we take if this happens, right? So document your top threats that are more likely to happen to your business and build out simple playbooks for each of those. And they're all over the internet. If you reach out to me, I'll send you a template for a few playbooks. They're not hard. You do have to customize them to your business because maybe you're set up differently, right? So the plan, the policy says we're going to do it. The plan says how we're going to do it. And the last document that you have is actually the test. Did we actually follow our process? Did we learn anything new? And do we need to update the program? Right. So there's kind of three kind of documents that we look at because we want a policy that says we do it. We want the actual plan. And then we want what comes out of that is the test. Okay. Anything to add there?
No, that's
Doing like this, almost like fireballing up here.
all right. So awareness training, everybody do some sort of phishing training, phishing simulation, education for your employees.
No before.
Okay, go before similar tool. All right, let's do this. Once a year phishing training, anybody? Okay. Quarterly, anybody? Keep raising your hand if you keep going. Quarterly, all right?
You're talking
Monthly?
Training or you're talking tests?
Training. I'll consider the testing training. Okay. Monthly, weekly phishing. Okay, all right. We got some good stuff in there. So KnowBe4, obviously, we're a reseller of KnowBe4. They've got great tools. One is for the security education. There's little videos and games that you could do to show their progress and show that people have taken it. Good program. And then they have the other step, which is still considered training, which is more of the phishing kind of simulations as well. So if you can layer those two together, do weekly, monthly, or quarterly phishing, and then sprinkle in quarterly training, you can at least know that they're getting enough. Now you could do too much too, but those are things outside of KnowBe4. What else are you doing? Do anything else other than KnowBe4?
So I'm a huge proponent of a company called Ningio, not sponsored by them. I pay them for their services. They do educational cartoons. They're like 4 minutes long. But the one that sticks out in my head, 2 weeks after the Colonial Pipeline incident, they had a 4-minute video on how it happened, how it could have been prevented, and why it's important to implement certain procedures to avoid it happening. And it was in a format that everybody could understand. From the front desk to accountants, everybody was like, that was an amazing video. I saw it on the news. I didn't know how something like that could happen, and that really dumbed it down for me. NINJIO.
Ninja,
Again, Ninjio. And it's very affordable. I don't know the pricing off the top of my head, but I think it's like less than $5 per person per month.
So everything that we talked about is also layered approaches, right? Security awareness, know before, good layer. There's also, if you've got a company where customers come into your office or whatever, posters are nice sometimes to put posters up. We still have organizations that host an annual security awareness training outside of KnowBe4 just to do it personally. There's some organizations that I've seen do a fraud Friday where somebody like an incident response coordinator sends out an incident every Friday to know that these are the types of attacks that have happened, right? So security is an all the time happening thing. What's going on, the news stories, the local stories are better because then the attack is possible.
So going back to the posters everywhere, does anybody else have cybersecurity awareness training in their bathroom? In their company bathroom? No, okay. What I found is pushing the security culture is so much easier than paying a cyber insurance claim. So I hand out free posters that I steal from SBS or SDN, and I give them to all my clients. Say, hey, put this in your bathroom. Put this here. So put it above the drinking fountain where people can see it. And then every month I send out a reminder, rotate them, women's bathroom to men's bathroom. And what I found is people notice them because they're like, why is this? I'm trying to go to the bathroom. Why is this here? But it's always front of mind. It's always changing. It's front of mind. That culture can stop a lot more than just the other stuff that we implement.
As far as the incident response coordinators and IT professionals in the room, culture starts at the top of the organization. So the leaders, the CFOs, the CEOs, if they're not engaged and excited about cybersecurity awareness, nobody else is going to be as well. So if you can get a good relationship there, and say, hey, have them get up and do promotional stuff around security awareness, or have them teach a security awareness class, and they're seeing the leaders of the organization do it, it's much easier for people to buy in versus it's coming from the IT person. The IT person sending me phishing emails. They're the devil, right? So think about that.
So we were talking earlier a little bit about the power of AI, creating all those images. I put in a simple prompt to demonstrate how effective AI could be at a phishing attack and simulating a trusted partner. AI did this. I don't know if you guys can read this in the back. This was 100% AI. I just fed it the prompt. You can do this prompt in Russian. You can do it in any language you want. And with the power of ChatGPT and Google Bard and all the other players out there, you create really, really good emails.
Can you like point out the flag on it at all? Say that again. The bottom.
Well,
Yeah.
yes. It's a
Travis had to point it out to me. He says that I is actually an L, lowercase L. So this is a spoof.
It's a spoof.
You guys wouldn't be able to tell that without fact knowledge, but it's a spoof email.
That's an L.
Well, that's also a different font. That would be my dead boy.
Yeah, it's because I studied that in PDFs.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I also had AI create these two things. It's hard to read when it's all compressed, but here's a follow-up email that with the new banking information. Again, we replace the I with an L. Oh, without having to even put an I in there. But this was all written by AI. It's a super powerful tool that not only are we using, the bad guys are using it too. Because it takes away all those Nigerian prince scams where it's littered with typos.
We just have, this is just a pretty common initial phishing email for business email compromise. It's a shared document, basically, that has them go to log into their account and provide their credentials and stuff. So these were just a time killer. But let's go back, if you would, Travis, to the last lessons learned. In this situation, obviously, dual controls was missed. And so, again, dual controls is a document and a procedure, right? So you have to put that in place. We didn't talk about this. Well, we talked about insurance getting involved, but ensure that we have local expertise that you can reach out to. And it doesn't have to be somebody that you pay money. It could be Dakota State University in Madison. I know that they run a lot of forensics for businesses that have had things happen, right? Reach out to public safety and reach out to those organizations for assistance. IC3, good organizations to make sure you've got documented in your response plan. You've got their names, their phone numbers, and their contact.
And honestly, it never hurts to network. So an event like this, you've got Golden West, you've got the SDNs, you've got the Omnitech, you've got SBS, you've got Katie with the Fusion Center, you've got Caitlin with Black Hills Energy. I think she just moved to. These are all extremely knowledgeable organizations, people, companies. How often do you get a call saying, hey, I need to pick your brain. I need your help understanding this. I get those calls every day and I love them because it's expanding our knowledge, and a rising tide raises all ships, right? We want to get better as a community, not just a company, but a cyber community. The harder everybody is to hit, the better.
We get calls all the time. We think that we've got a compromise. We jump on there for an hour, walk through to go check and make these checks to kind of identify if it's very likely or not likely. We used to do forensics and incident response. We lost our one resource to do that. So we don't do that anymore. We partner with a firm now, but we can point our customers in the right direction. The other thing about it is know and understand your expectations on notification rules. So in the banking industry, they came out and said there's a 36-hour notification rule for anything that's material. 36 hours versus the state of South Dakota is 60 days. Right? So know based on your regulatory body or anybody that oversees that there's SEC came out with something similar to that. The FTC is starting to take on the GLBA guidelines from that perspective. The state notification is 60 days. Just know that, generally understand them. Because it's hard to think when something's happened. Like there's an incident, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Right? So understand what goes on. Even document some of that in your plan. Say, we know that we've got to do this by this amount of time. Blah, blah, blah. And then once this is done, the best thing that you can do is document the incident, because what you should do on an annual basis is to review all of the incidents that you've had throughout the year, right? To the board or to the executive committee or to the ownership group, say, all right, 2023, we had 5 incidents. This is what happened. Right, and then you can take these incidents and you take it to the company as security awareness training. Saying this is the situation. You don't have to say it's you, but here's the scenario. This is what happened. This is our expectation of every single employee that we follow these kind of guide rules. And documenting helps with insurance, of course. So, yeah. What do we miss?
Struggle with the dual controls piece, because if it's a wire, somebody puts it in the system, the next person approves it, whatever the 2-person control factor, but Nobody in that ever, like was stated earlier, reached out to the other company and said, hey, is this true? Is this legit? I got this email 2 weeks ago, and now I got this change. Because your dual control process wouldn't solve that.
So what you're talking about is detection of a possible, the threat where nobody outside of that email reached out to them out of band and say, is this real? That's a very good point.
We called, from our wiring instructions to the vendor, to the very first person who writes up the wire, calls and then notate who they spoke with at the company.
But you could also put a policy in place so that if there's ever a change in the way that you pay a vendor, you verify it before it's paid. Right? That's like a red flag. Happens all the time, that you put a policy and a procedure in place that you verify the change, right? So
We also verify it with your own internal documents and that. Whatever says in the email.
right.
So we always use our vendor list. We get all that information in there, and the change comes in, we have contact. And call that personally.
Yep. And that's gonna be an insurance requirement if you want the WTF coverage or invoice manipulation. That's going to be a requirement, is that callback provision. That's what we always call it in the insurance world.
Callback.
Yeah,
Anytime there's a change in account that you pay, you do a callback. Not an email back.
I think we're out of time.
Okay.
Do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns? We've been trying to keep this pretty open the whole time. Nick's got some resources here. I think the slide deck will be available. So take it, do this with your organization. That'd be great. Call us, we'll help. There's the information. LinkedIn's a great spot to follow me anyway. You post a lot on LinkedIn? Sometimes. But reach out to us, grow that community of experts. We deal with this all the time.
Really appreciate you attending and interaction. Really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.